Oh, sorry, I could not be time.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi. Sorry, I just want to make sure it's, like, picking up our voices. Okay, so I'm not going to transcribe. How would you define feminism?
You want me to just say it again? I define feminism as equality among the sexes.
Okay. Now, how do you think that the media portrays a feminist?
I think a lot of times they get twisted into some sort of caricature. Like, I remember in my 346 class talking about the fighting fuck toy.
Oh.
Where you had these women in films who seemed like they were really strong, powerful figures, but when you broke them down, they were kind of superficial, action fighting, clad in patent leather kind of sex toys,
Yeah.
And I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, they will portray somebody as being totally without sexuality. So you get, like, an androgynous kind of woman who you can't even think of in a sexual way, like she's just lost all of that. And then I also think that, you have these two extremes, but then you don't really get an accurate portrait of, a modern feminist. Hold on. Okay. Because, when you think about it, I feel like all women should be feminists because that's just self-advocacy.
Yeah.
And when you think about the average person, I don't think you ever see that when you're, when you get this portrayal of a feminist. It's always kind of, like I said, a caricature.
Yeah. It's like an angrier version of what you think it should be.
Right.
Do you think that media portrayal of a feminist, like, prevents women from defining themselves as such?
I think so. And I know, like, a lot of celebrity women have come out being like, I consider myself a feminist. And when you get people, like, prominent women who are very successful and who are obviously well respected saying that they don't consider themselves feminists, and that just gives the message out to everybody else to follow their lead.
Yeah. Do you know who has done something like that?
I forgot. I remember, let me Google. I remember I was reading some interview, and they asked this person, who I'm blanking on, if she considered herself a feminist, and she just straight away said, no, I don't. Female.
Interesting. So now, do you believe that the media had any effect on what you define yourself as when it comes to a feminist, or do you think that was learned through different places, like your home life or school or things like that?
Well, I was raised by two parents who strongly valued feminism. Like, I was raised by a very strong woman who, to the point where I didn't even think that feminism was an issue until I was much older and started to see it myself. Because I was just always raised to expect, to raise myself to the same standard as a boy would.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't even occur to me, so I was always, going after, like, leadership positions and trying out for school plays and participating in the spelling bee and geography bee, and it didn't even occur to me that, like, somebody would think that I couldn't do it because I was a girl,
Yeah.
And so coming from that environment, when I started to get older and I saw that, I'm a film student, and film is a very male-dominated industry, and I've read interviews of, investors who won't give money to productions that have female producers or female directors because they just don't trust them, and that to me is appalling.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's, seeing this on a grand scale has reinforced everything that I was raised to believe. So, like, it started when I was younger because my parents taught me that that's the way I should go about things, and then was reinforced when I saw people were going to try and hold me back because of my gender.
Yeah. So now I have a few images here of some women who do not believe in feminists, and this first one says, I don't need feminism because I believe in equality, not entitlements and supremacy.
Who said that?
Supremacy, just random internet angry girls. And then I don't need feminism because it has turned from movement about equality to hateful, sexist, corrupt group that disregards people's issues due to privilege. Do you think that part of this is true, or do you think that the media likes to sensationalize these,
I think it's
like,
definitely
individuals?
sensationalized, and I think it's just a complete misunderstanding of what the movement is. that was kind of obscured because maybe you had one or two anomalies of women who were behaving in such a way, but the movement as a whole was meant to empower and not to bring down the male gender.
Yeah.
You know? And I think I've heard some talk about people advocating to change the name to, like, equalism or something like that, you know? Just, like, rebrand it, because I feel like it has been sullied by all of this misunderstanding and all of these, you know, these images that you're talking about of this crazy man-eater, which is just so far from the message of feminism as a whole.
Do you think that rebranding it, as you said, would be a positive thing for the movement, or do you think it would just kind of give in to this sort of untrue idea?
I'm not really sure, but I think I mean, personally, I feel like feminism is a very clear word for what it is. Mm-hmm. But ooh,
I'm gonna pause you.
Okay.
Coming.
Okay, let me get back on my track.
Okay.
What was the question?
We're talking about rebranding the
rebranding.
feminist movement.
Okay.
Yes.
And I was saying that I feel like it's a clear term, but I also feel like the word feminist and feminism have become very politicized and stigmatized to the point where maybe changing the word would create this fresh idea in people's minds of what it actually means.
Okay.
You know?
Do you think that would kind of create, like, a woman-on-woman conflict? Like, people who define themselves as, like, one or another?
I mean, everybody gets mad about everything.
This is so true.
So, yeah, at the same time, I think it could also be divisive. Just because I think that would also create backlash from people who consider themselves feminists who are questioning why we need to change the word feminism just to make everybody else happy, you know?
So do you think that there is a more effective solution to that problem, or is that just
educating people about what feminism actually is? And, like, I'm just so enraged that all these high-profile people are rejecting it, you know? And I wish, I'm going to try and search for this because I really want the names of the people who were interviewed to back this up, but...
Do you find that men calling themselves feminists is an effective way to, like, make people understand, or do you think that just sort of...
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I was also raised, thank you, my father is incredibly feminist and has always, you know, been supportive of my mom and, I mean, his two daughters, and has raised his two sons to be the same way. Oh, okay, I found the celebrities.
Oh my god, good.
Kelly Clarkson says, no, I wouldn't say feminist, that's too strong. I think when people hear feminist, it's like, get out of my way, I don't need anyone, I love that I'm being taken care of, and I have a man that's a leader, I'm not a feminist in that sense. And I think that that is such a misguided interpretation of what it is, because she's effectively saying that if you consider yourself a feminist, you can't be in a relationship, you can't allow a man to take care of you, and I think that that's just feeding into this idea of if you're a feminist, then you have to be alone, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not the way, like, my parents were always very much in a partnership with equal, you know, shared responsibility and shared parenting, of course. And then Taylor Swift.
Not really, of course, though.
That's the thing. All these things seem so natural to me because that's how I was raised. So I know that I really struggle with accepting the fact that other people aren't going to believe that women should be raised to that level. And, you know, people who say women shouldn't be presidents because they'll be too moody on their menstrual cycle. That is so hard for me to fathom, you know? Just a complete and utter rejection of, you know, it's like degrading yourself.
Yes.
It's saying that you're not capable of something simply because of the way that you were born. And I feel like that's so wrong. Taylor Swift, I don't really think about things as guys versus girls. I never have. So I think she just...
No one could
she's
also
pitting
argue
this
that
as genders against genders.
Yeah, and you could argue that a lot of these women are describing, like, the feminist movement, but what they're saying is that they're not the perverse version of it.
Lady Gaga, I'm not a feminist. I hail men. I love men. I celebrate American male culture. Also a misunderstanding. I love men as well. Bjork, I don't identify as a feminist because I think it would isolate me. I think it's important to do positive stuff. It's more important to be asking than complaining. And I think that just nullifies everything that feminism stands for as, like, an active movement, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just women complaining, it's women advocating for change.
Yeah.
And trying to make it so that women have the opportunities that men have.
Exactly.
Katy Perry, I am not a feminist, but I do believe in the strength of women. Which is a complete, like, oxymoron. Sorry. Hello!
No, it's okay. I can hear you perfectly. But if you speak clearly and a little bit louder, like, I'll be able to hear you
Got it.
back again.
And then there are a couple celebrities like Madonna and Susan Sarandon who have said, I'm not a feminist, I'm a humanist. Maybe that's what I was talking about when I said equalism. Okay. Which I think is kind of a fair thing to say, but I think it's also doing more to stigmatize the word at the same time. So, like, their message is strong and clear, and it's a positive message, but it's also taking away from a movement that people have worked for decades to build.
Yes. Do you think that this disregard for feminism shows, like, a lack of understanding of history, or do you think that it's just a lack of understanding of, like, the current landscape of the world?
I think it's just a hesitation to attach yourself to a word that many people find to be isolating.
Okay. Now, there's this other image that I found very interesting, to keep kind of going with this third conversation. I don't need feminism because I'm an adult who's capable of taking responsibility for myself and my actions. I am not a target for violence, and there's no war against me. I respect men. I refuse to demonize them and blame them for my problems. Now, where do you think that this sort of, like... Now, do you think claiming that there is a war on women is anti-feminist, or do you think that it just sort of is acknowledging, like, something that is actually there? Or not a war on women.
Is that two questions?
A little bit. That wasn't a very well-phrased question.
Which one should I answer first? Can you read the quote again?
I don't mean feminism because I'm an adult who's capable of taking responsibility for myself and my actions. I am not a target for violence, and there's no war against me. I respect men, and I refuse to demonize them and blame them for my problems.
Okay, well then I think that's just, you know, they're taking the personal stance that they don't see it present in their lives, so they don't need to get involved in other people's, you know?
Yeah. So do you think that, now I know Lorde, you talked about celebrities.
Yeah.
I know Lorde is kind of calling Selena Gomez, like, an anti-feminist because of some of her songs and her lyrics. Now, do you view her as, like, a feminist crusader, or do you view her as...
I think she's a very aggressive feminist crusader, and that's very off-putting for a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
Because she's somebody that's not afraid to hold back, and she takes very aggressive stands.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I've complained about Selena Gomez's music before, just in passing to my sister. You know, her song Come and Get It is, like, a very passive offering of her body to another man to take advantage of kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
You know, which I do, I mean, I kind of like the song, but I find it problematic, and I don't think that Lorde is off in criticizing it, but at the same time, I don't know, I really struggle with this, because I also feel like it's kind of backwards to be criticizing successful female artists, you know? Like, she's obviously this powerhouse, but I think I take more issue with the song than criticizing other women.
Okay. So...
I forget what the question was.
No, just do you find that, is she forward-thinking or backward-thinking in criticizing another woman for her belief and her art, or do you think that what she's doing and what she's mentioning is more worthwhile? Because we were watching a video the other night, and Selena Gomez was saying, you know, I don't think feminism is about criticizing another woman. I think it's about supporting one another. But
that's the thing, but that seems very backwards to me, because if you're treating women specially, then you're not treating them equally. Mm-hmm. If you're saying that we have to support all women because we're women and we're in it together, then that becomes something else altogether.
Okay.
And I think it'll be, you know, you'll see that women are being treated more fairly when you don't even have to think about things like that, you know?
Okay.
Like, I don't think it'll ever become irrelevant, the fact that it's a woman criticizing a woman. I think people will always be like, oh, well, she's just bringing her down. How dare she? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, if it was a man criticizing a man, I don't think this would be an argument. You know, it wouldn't be like, oh, he's anti... But that's the thing. There isn't really a man's advocacy group.
There's never been the need.
Right?
There's never been
Although
the
I
need.
think there is one. It's just like, who would spend their time doing that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
It's amazing.
Like, you're not really that needy.
Yeah, no, there's not really... Yeah, there's not really a need. So do you think that there is now one of my other interviewees kind of was speaking about male feminists and how she said that she found issue with some male feminists on campus who she has encountered who just
I think I know what she's talking about.
Yeah, who says that she's like, you know, they view them as almost like female worshipping, and she said that she doesn't believe that that is the...
That's how they view themselves?
No, that they themselves define themselves as a feminist, but she said that every interaction she's ever had with them has been a little bit more female worshipping and not necessarily viewing them as, like, them as, like, goddesses almost, was the term that she used.
That's odd.
And she said that was just kind of, like, their attitude towards it. Have you ever experienced something like that, or do you find...
No. I haven't, but I don't doubt that that's the experience she had. I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of the male advocates on campus who work with, like, a men's issue and who do SU Rising and things like that, and I've never really heard them talk that way. It's always been, they had, like, the men that I've talked to have had some sort of personal experience where they saw a woman that they cared about struggling in some way, or... You know, they link into domestic abuse a lot. They do a lot of domestic abuse work, so things like that. And maybe she was saying, like, I have no idea what she said, but, like, I can see how you could take that as, like, male protectionism, kind of.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never come across that, though.
So what do you think drives... Now, you said you worked with a men's issue and things like that.
I just know people in it.
Oh, you just know people in it? Okay.
The McGriff brothers.
That's the way I believe she
Yeah. Really? I've never like heard them come off that way.
Yeah, she says that, she says that one of them has referred to women as, like, goddesses who should be treated as queens and things like that.
See, that I feel like
just, like, a case of
is
mixed
regressive.
Up vernacular?
I don't know, because I think that's part of the reason why people struggle with feminism is because they think that it's either men have to be on top or women have to be on top, and it's a war of the sexes, when really it's just women trying to gain equal footing.
I agree with
So I think if men are, some people might think that that was a sign of strength, but I think that that's actually regressive. Because if you're raising a woman up to higher than a man, then it becomes actually, like, antagonistic, kind of, instead of empowering.
Yeah, it's had, and I think it's probably, would you say that's what women who are affected by, like, this media portrayal of feminism are seeing and thinking, who have not necessarily had the upbringing that you had.
Who seem to think that it's a strong word that implies this stance that we are goddesses. Which, maybe some of us are.
Maybe. Case by case.
Exactly. Anyway.
So what other generalized opinions do you have about feminism that I didn't cover, that I wasn't able to allow you to speak on?
Just that I feel like oftentimes, I was talking about you with the Bechdel test earlier, where you'll measure films to see if they are, accurately representing women or giving, screen time to female characters, and it really doesn't measure how they're portrayed, it just measures if they're portrayed. And just because a woman is in a movie doesn't mean she's, contributing positively.
Okay.
So, like...
My understanding from one of my other interviews was that, maybe this is a different test that I'm thinking of, is that if two women are in screen interacting, and it's not interacting about a man.
Yeah, it's
would, like, get a
two named
ranking.
characters who talk to each other for more than, I think, 30 seconds. I'll just move it closer to me. More than 30 seconds about something other than a man. Yeah. But that is so broad, like, it's... And 30 seconds out of, like a 2-hour movie, the bar is set so low that it's like, sure, you could, like, this movie will pass it, but I just don't think that it's it's a strong enough test. I don't want to... Everybody likes the Bechdel test. I don't want to take it down, but... I think that I just struggle with, like... I do see more women in movies, but I don't see, like, really fully developed women characters a lot of the time. And when I do see a movie like that, like, when I was abroad, I saw the movie Wajda and, like, freaked out because there was just this beautiful relationship between mother and daughter, and they seemed like just completely wholly developed characters that were so believable, and you really identified with emotionally. They weren't just superficial side characters who, you know, talked for like one scene and so the movie passes. They're core to the story. And we don't really have a lot of female leads in movies. Like, I remember everybody was like, oh yeah, Katniss. Like, and that was like a big deal, you know, in the Hunger Games, that there was a woman leading this major, like, multi-million-dollar movie empire. And I want to see more of it.
Yeah. As a TRF student, as someone who has been abroad and studied abroad, and you're an Italian major, do you find that foreign film and foreign media does a better job at representing, like, strong female characters, or do you think that overall there needs to be... Okay.
To give an accurate response. But, I mean, when I was in Europe, I was working at the International Festival of Cinema and Women in Florence, which is the oldest festival in all of Europe for female filmmakers. And so I think I was just in this very different environment where it was very much, you know, rewarding women and honoring women's work and letting them know that they have the tools to make a film and the platform to show it, which was very refreshing. And then I just last weekend worked the Athena Film Festival in New York City, which was essentially the same thing. And I like left that weekend so empowered because I saw all these beautiful women, and I think that you really do learn by example. And I was just reading this article this morning about Sheryl Sandberg, who's redoing a bunch of stock photos of women.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah,
Adweek?
I did.
And she said something that really struck me, and she's like, you can't be what you can't see. And I think that is why this is such an important thing to be talking about, because I don't think people realize how pervasive the messages from media are. Well, maybe they realize, but it's a very subconscious absorption of what we're seeing. And if you aren't watching that in movies or on TV, then you're not going to realize that that's something that you should even be thinking about or striving for.
What do you think is one of the largest, even like subconsciously absorbed issues for women in media today? Girls who are absorbing media. What do you think is what's holding us back the most?
I mean, growing up, I don't think I had a lot of... Like, I really want to be a producer. And there are more female producers than there were, 30 years ago. But they're still far and few between. When you look at the movie credits, it's like almost all men in the executive, director, executive producer slots. And just, I so respect people like Tina Fey is my idol, because she is this like go-getter, do-it-all kind of woman who made a show about a woman in her late 30s. Like, that's just, if you pitched it, I just, like, if she didn't have the standing that she had when she made the show, I don't think it ever would have gotten made, kind of thing. You know? And so I think it's really important to have people who aren't afraid to say that they're a strong woman and they're a feminist, so that you know that that's an okay thing to be.
Now, do you think the problem is that women are not defining themselves as feminism, or that they are not being, that they're afraid of they're more afraid of the word than the concept?
Probably. Because, like we were saying...
saying the word feminism and defining yourself as that would do good things.
Yeah. I think that in itself is empowering. Not being afraid to take a stance and stand up for yourself. But people seem to think that that's just an aggressive move will somehow desexualize you and make you this angry complainer, like Bjork said.